Haran dodges his opponent's feast. He realizes he has to pull it off. The hero strikes his opponent with his blade. Tanzir says with a sneer that all is in vain. Haran avoids a punch by using a special technique. Tanzir keeps punching, letting the guy know that such weak attacks can't penetrate his body. The hero breaks with the use of his hand. His feet slip on the ground. Haran, clenching his teeth, holds on with all his might. Tanzir begins to resent Haran's application of sequential dissecting strikes. The guy is trying to stand up to the power of the enemy. The expression on Tanzir's face turns vicious. He grins, still claiming that his opponent's punches are too weak. The clinking of metal is heard as it touches Tanzir's armored skin. Grating his teeth, Haran forces himself to punch harder and deeper. The sound of clanking metal can be heard. Tanzir cringed, realizing that something was happening to his armor. Haran lands a decisive strike that snaps his opponent's head back. The hero finishes the blow by turning away from the enemy. Tanzir flies off to the side with a bloody wound in his body. Blood spatters around Haran. His defeated foe lies motionless on the ground. Haran lowers his gaze. Droplets of his opponent's blood run down his face. Holding his sword in his shaking hand, Haran thinks about how this consistent use of skills was a serious test for his body. Haran stands still with his head down. The enemy lies behind him in a pool of blood. Puya is in a clearing between two dead mummy warriors. Gumon stands in the middle of the river. Two dead warriors from Nurhan's army lie next to the boy. A smile appears on Gumon's swollen face, with trickles of blood running down it. The kid says it was expected. Haran hides his sword in its scabbard as the boy is called out by Gumon running towards him. Holding his head in his hand, Gumon says that since it has come to this situation, it is time for them to go home. Haran is surprised at this statement and reminds him that they are not done yet. Putting on his hat, Gumon asks Haran to pay attention to what Nurhan has done to them. The boy reasons that even if they had delivered the letter unharmed, the ending would have been the same. Gumon laments that he can't believe that Nurhan did this to them. Haran is silent. His gaze expresses no emotion. Gumon sighs heavily and continues to cringe because he respected Nurhan so much, and now he feels resentful that it was like he was out of his mind back then. Haran turns around abruptly and Gumon opens the only eye that opens. They hear someone coughing. Tanzir shows signs of life, lying on the ground. He is shivering and coughing. Gumon's gaze fills with rage. Drawing his sword over Tanzir's head, he angrily promises to pacify his enemy. Haran puts his hand on Gumon's sword, managing to stop him. The hero looks at Gumon with a serious look. The kid asks him what's up. Haran shakes his head negatively. Gumon looks at him skeptically. The kid exhales doomedly. He agrees to let the enemy live. Haran stands next to Gumon. Puya quickly runs towards them. Gumon warns to keep Haran in mind that there are people who have died at the hands of their enemies after showing such mercy. Haran lowers his eyes in silence. He thinks about what he knows about it, because it's not just a game. Puya approaches Haran. Gumon leaves the cave, looking after him. Haran thinks that since they are not in the game, he should not be too indifferent to all lives. The weather is sunny. The heroes leave the temple, which is located in the rocks. Puya walks confidently ahead, carrying a club on her shoulder. Haran and Gumon follow the barbarian girl. The boy asks if Haran wants to say that if a seed of the 1,000-year-old grass takes root in someone from the Li tribe, that person will absorb its nutrients and become a 1,000-year-old grass. Haran answers in the affirmative. Gumon is confused and says he gets goosebumps all over his body from talking like that. The boy wonders how a warrior city could be such an unpleasant place. Gumon overtakes everyone, suggesting that they should hurry back as he doesn't like this place. Puya follows the boy. Haran stops abruptly on the spot. The hero is thinking about something. Gumon wonders why the hero is standing still. The kid starts to guess something. Haran replies with a steely gaze that he is thinking of the boy that Nurhan took away. Gumon screams hysterically. Leaning over to the calm Haran, the teenager convinces the guy that he must be crazy because they've already failed the mission and won't get anywhere by going after this kid. The teenage warrior shouts nervously, trying to convince Haran that the three of them will do nothing against Nurhan's army. He says he knows of Haran's strength, but even with that in mind, it should be realized that going into Nurhan's lair would be utter folly. Haran lowers his eyes thoughtfully and does not answer Gumon's question about whether he understands all of the above. A surprised Gumon and Haran look up when they see the stranger who stole their letter earlier on one of the ledges. With his hands folded across his chest, the guy smilingly asks why there was an internal squabble. Haran remains calm, while Gumon waves his fist in fury upon seeing the familiar guy. The stranger jumps off the ledge and ends up next to the heroes. The angry Gumon waves his fist and reminds them that the guy promised them he wouldn't follow them. But here he is again, making an indifferent grimace. The stranger replies that he was here before the heroes came, and was just resting on this rock. Standing in front of the heroes, the guy asks with a smile what's up with the 1,000-year-old grass, and whether the heroes managed to find it. The guy is skeptical. Gumon waves his finger and replies to the stranger that it's none of his business. The guy ironically remarks that Gumon is acting like a brute. He offers to help the guys if he can. Gumon grudgingly replies that the stranger only talks forever, pointing his finger at the teenager's face. The stranger asks what happened to him and ironically suggests that the kid gets beaten up wherever he appears. An exasperated Gumon waves his fist and demands that the kid stop talking nonsense. The teenager angrily asks if he looks like he's getting beaten up all the time. Haran stands nearby, silently watching the altercation. The hero squints, thinking about the fact that as soon as they started arguing, the guy suddenly appeared, as if he was specifically waiting for the right moment. The stranger laughs with his hands out in front of him, while the enraged Gumon swings his fist at him. The boy smiles broadly and waves his hand in a conciliatory manner. Haran thinks about what this stranger needs from them, because he saved the heroes from the poison, so it can't be hostile to them. Haran sighs, confused in his thoughts. He was beginning to realize that this guy was the only one who could help them right now. The stranger and Gumon, who had grabbed him by the bandage around his neck, turn around sharply when they hear Haran's question about how much the boy knows about Nurin. The stranger is puzzled by such a question. The guy replies in a serious voice that he knows quite a bit, then asks why Haran would want to know. A hero with a serious look asks a stranger for help. The guy's surprised. Haran's gaze looks confident. A stranger with a condescending but friendly smile tells the heroes to follow him. The mountain wind blows the face of Amon, who is lying on the ground and is in a fainting state. Suddenly, the teenager opens his eyes. Amon looks around in surprise. On the mountain is a tall temple built in the shape of a cross. A withered tree grows on the roof of the building, and Amon sits beside it. A boy sitting on his knees is chained to a wooden pole with a metal chain. Amon is shocked. The kid looks surprised at his shackled hands. A vapor appears on the face of a distraught Amon. The teenager is immersed in his memories. In his mind, he is in a poorly furnished room of a wooden house. Armor, helmet, sword, cloak, and arrows are spread out on tables and on the floor. A jug, boots, a bowl of water and a cloth, and a barrel of water stand next to the bed. On the bed lies an elderly woman covered with a blanket. Amon holds her hand, sitting by the bedside. The boy recalls the woman calling him child and telling him that everything was fine, and even though they had been hiding for too long, she would finally be able to rest. Amon tearfully asks his grandmother to wait for him and says he will go and ask for more medicine. An elderly woman with gray hair, breathing heavily, tells Amon that for the Lee tribe, death is a blessing. Tears well up in Amon's eyes as he listens to his grandmother, who tells him that there is a small gate waiting for them when they enter the afterlife. The elderly woman explains that this gate allows them to forget their present life and move on to the next. Smiling, the old woman tells Amon that she will not open the gate and will wait for Amon there. The grandmother asks her grandson to tell her everything that has happened in his life when they meet again. The flashback ends and the kid bows his head. Sitting under a tree at the top of the temple, Amon casts his eyes down sadly. Hearing some sounds, the kid opens his eyes abruptly. Looking up, Amon sees a smirking Erkin, who has folded his arms across his chest and is hovering over the boy. Another man is standing nearby, holding a box. Amon is very frightened. Nurin, with burning red eyes and a snide smirk, says he likes the look on the boy's face. Nurin reaches out to the man who opens the box. He pulls a seed out of a red box. Nurkin holds up a large round seed with his fingers, smiling slyly. Suddenly he shoves this seed into Amon's mouth, squeezing his throat hard. Nurin lifts Amon off the ground with a smile, holding him by the throat. The boy croaks and tries to resist, but Nurkin forces him to swallow the seed. Nearby is a man with a box. Nurin clutches the boy's throat with a steely grip. Amon's face turns blue from lack of oxygen. With red eyes and a venomous smile, Nurin is pleased that the kid swallowed the seed. Amon falls to the ground in shackles, shrieking loudly in pain. He finds himself at the feet of his tormentor. The boy gulps air with his mouth, trying to catch his breath. Looking down at it from above, Nurin is happy that the seed is now inside and only has to wait for it to sprout. Nurin and his assistant leave the roof. The ruler laughs loudly. Hearing Nurin's laughter, Amon falls face down on the ground. A tear drips from the boy's eyes. Remembering his grandmother, Amon thinks that his story is ending. Birds fly over the city and the rocks. Flying past the temple, the heroes approach the mountain where the entrance to the city is. The stranger walks ahead. The heroes follow him. Gumon says he's very happy to get this mission because it was boring working on the border. But now he can't believe how things turned out. The stranger turns around and ironically asks Gumon not to tell him that the kid has no experience in wars. Gumon waves a finger and croaks, replying that it means nothing and rebuking the stranger for the same. Upon reflection, the stranger says that a couple hundred wars are sure to rack up. Gumon replies skeptically that this is nonsense. Going after Haran, Gumon tries to convince him that their mission is over and they shouldn't get further involved. With a metallic look, Haran replies that Nuren and his minions started it. Gumon sighs heavily and croaks when reminded that they could all die without doing anything. So the best solution would be to go back. Peeking out from behind the rock, the stranger puts his finger to his lips, urging everyone to be silent. Haran's gaze remains steely. Behind him is a puzzled Puya. Gumon squints skeptically. City guards in orange robes and with clenched fists prowl nearby. The stranger looks out of the cave and sees the guards leaving. Seeing the last guard leaving the cave leading into the city, the stranger peeks out of hiding. The stranger silently points his finger in the direction the guards have gone. Haran watches him. Haran's gaze looks determined as he nods affirmatively, letting him know he understood the stranger. Gumon snickered unhappily. The heroes follow the smiling stranger through the tunnel. Poya looks around and grips his baton tighter. Haran is immersed in his thoughts. Gumon is the last to go. Grinning, he says that the stranger is too good for a thief. The guy grudgingly asks how long Gumon is going to call him a thief, and reminds him that he actually has a name. Gumon, squinting, asks what the stranger's name is. At this time, Yuta's new residence is bustling with life. The barbarians continue to settle in, and merchants fill the streets with their shops. The princess is sitting at the table with her back to the window. There is a loud knock on the door. Sun walks into the room calling the princess's name. Yuta is writing something on paper while sitting at a table. Next to her sits a Hasso, who is leaning on a wooden cane. Sun looks puzzled at his recent captive. Hasso's eyes are blindfolded with white cloth. The man looks better than he did during his time in the cell. His hair is now neatly tied back. The former prisoner has been washed and is wearing clean clothes. Looking at Yuta, Sun reports with a smile that he has set up a separate residence for the barbarians as ordered by the princess, and has also made provisions to contact them in emergencies. Yuta puts the writing brush on the table. The princess thanks Swina with a sincere smile. Remembering Nanron, Sun says that they should thank the girl's tribe, since they were the ones who helped set things up. The man explains that the situation has been resolved. Leaning her hands on the table, Yuta rises and lowers her head. She replies that she's glad to hear that. Sun, puzzled, asks what's wrong and notices that the princess doesn't look well. Yuta puts her hand on the window frame and replies that it's no big deal. The princess looks out the window. Sun walks closer to her and, with his hands spread, asks what's wrong then. Yuta is concentrating on looking somewhere. Looking at the vegetable vendors' stalls, the travelers scurrying down the street, and the locals, among them warriors, male laborers, women with laundry baskets, and small children. Yuta asks hopefully if Haran will definitely be okay. Folding her arms across her chest, Sun replies that the princess has nothing to worry about, as it's unlikely that Haran would be angry at her for simply delivering a letter. Yuta lowers her eyes. The princess looks worried as she admits that she feels uneasy knowing how Nuren might react. The girl wonders if she should go to the Lord of the Highlands herself. Sun closes his eyes and replies that Yuta's anxiety is normal, because they lived day after day in anxiety until they got here. Yuta turns to speak as Sun slams his hand down on the map on the table and says that they should look at it another way. Keeping his hand on the map and looking at it, Sun says confidently that if they manage to make an alliance with Nuren, Jod will not dare to attack them as it pleases. Sun reasons that they have a geographical advantage here, with the rear facing the Rocky Mountain Autonomous Region, and it gives them a chance to buy time. Yuta thoughtfully interjects what her interlocutor means. Sun's facial expression turns serious as he explains that it will take them a while for the news that the princess is alive and well to spread throughout the kingdom. Yuta is puzzled. Sun recalls the dead king in a pool of blood, and the bloody sword drawn over him. He says that Jod can rule the kingdom now, since he has usurped the throne, but for that reason many people have animosity toward him. The images of three people appear before Sun's face, a man and a woman with black hair, and a man dressed as an assassin. He says that if everyone who swore allegiance to the former king learns that the princess is well, they will march here. Sun squints his eyes and says confidently that when the time comes, they will have enough military might. Yuta's eyes widen with surprise. Turning to Hasso, Sun asks if he's thought about it too, and Hasso replies that they are, but it's all based on the assumption that they'll be able to form an alliance. The princess is thinking about something with her head down. Sun stands behind Yuta, who looks at Haso and asks him what kind of person Nurin is. Haso replies that Nurin has been hiding from everyone for a long time after he fell ill with an incurable disease. The man explains that there are rumors that, except for his most loyal assistants, no one sees the Lord of the Rocky Mountains anymore. Yuta asks puzzled if this could mean that the letter they sent will not reach Nurin, and Haso replies that the letter was just a formality, for their true purpose is to find out where Nurin is now. Yuta is puzzled, and Haso says that this is why he then said that someone capable and reliable should be sent to Nurin. Haran's gaze looks icy. A concerned Puya stands beside him. The stranger interjects if they really want to know his name. Gumam grudgingly croaks. Puya looks at the stranger with wide-open eyes, folding his arms across his chest. The guy replies that his name is Vandasoy Arenas is at the second, or Vandasoy the second for short. The heroes stare in surprise at the guy standing in front of them, pointing a finger at him. Puya tries several times to pronounce his new name, but only when Yari comes out. Gumam shouts angrily, thinking the guy is mocking him, and there can't be such a name. Puya looks at Vandasoy in surprise, and Haran puts his hand on the furious Gumam's shoulder, urging him to calm down and be quiet. The boy swings his fist in anger, looking away. The guy says it told the truth. Vandasoy reaches the edge of the cave where the sunlight is visible. Puya follows him at a gallop. Haran walks beside the barbarian girl. Gumam stands behind the heroes and replies that it doesn't give a shit what the guy's name really is and will continue to call him thief. Fingers grip the edge of the cliff. Vandasoy peers out from behind the rock with a smile and says that here they are. The heroes stand on the edge of a cliff. Puya looks down curiously. Vandasoy points his finger upwards and says that this is the place where there is the most security and sunlight. He explains to Haran that if you climb up that cliff, you can see the temple there. Gumam asks if he is talking about the temple or the prison. Haran looks down, being above the cliff and holding onto the edge of the cliff. He says it makes sense, because if they had decided to grow the 1,000-year-old grass they talked about, they would have done it in a well-lit place. Squinting his eyes, Gumam asks skeptically if Haran really wants to climb the rock. The mountains are being blown around by a strong wind. The heroes try to make their way along the cliff, moving along the narrow ledge. Haran goes first, followed by Vandasoy, Puya on all fours, and Gumam last. A hand grasps the edge of the cliff. Vandasoy stands on a rock with his arms folded across his chest. Haran is on one side of him and Puya is on the other. Gumam is the last to climb the ledge. The teenage warrior breathes heavily with his head down. Haran heads down the path in the rocks. Vandasoy and Puya are behind him. Gumam's face is covered in rivulets of sweat, but that kid says, bravely, that it was nothing. Gumam, standing next to Puya, asks Vandasoy, crouched next to Haran, how long he's going to hang around with them. The guy replies with a smile that he's just bored. Haran, at this point, looks out from behind the rock with a serious look. The hero observes the soldiers, who have surrounded the temple on all sides and are standing at his foot. Haran thinks about the fact that, as he had suspected, there appeared to be a lot of guards here. Looking at the tree at the top of the temple, Haran notices that this is where the most sunlight hits. The boy thinks that Amen must be somewhere at the top. Looking straight ahead with a determined look, Haran decides that they need to get through the guards to get to the top of the temple, and then they'll have to figure out how to get out of here. Vandasoy, sitting next to Haran, casually looks down, swallows fearfully, and begins to stagger. The guy turns blue and covers his eyes, covering his mouth with his hand. Vandasoy accidentally pushes Haran's back. The hero is wobbly and frightened. Haran tries to stay on his feet, taking a step back. The hero finds himself in a prominent position, where he is spotted by a surprise security guard. Haran is shocked. The guards are surprised by the appearance of the intruder. One of the guards quickly draws his sword from its sheath and shouts loudly, informing the other soldiers of the intruder. Gritting his teeth, Haran throws himself into the fray. Using a special skill, Haran destroys the soldiers who drop dead. The hero resolutely runs forward, realizing that since this is the case, it's time to fight. Haran, sword in hand, lightning fast approaches to more baffled enemies. Behind him, Gumam and Puya also rush into action. The soldiers do not have time to draw their blades. They are discouraged and shocked by the speed of the Haran attacking them. The guards only have time to think that the guy is too fast, and they won't have time to draw their swords. With a sharp blow, Haran deadens his opponents, tossing them aside. Another soldier rushes forward with determination when he sees Haran. The other guard recoils and stops frightened on the temple steps. One of the guards pulls out a bugle and is about to warn of the attack. Suddenly the warrior's eyes turn red and blood spatters fly around. The soldier falls to the ground, and the horn flies aside. Gumon stands over the slain warrior with a bloody sword. The kid covers his eyes and exhales with relief. He says he's had time to be frightened. Haran turns around, standing next to the defeated warrior. He sees Gumon and Puya with bloody weapons. Around them, the bodies of dead enemies lie on the ground. Gumon silently closes his eyes, and then he opens them abruptly. The boy's eyes look determined. Clenching his fist, Gumon screams in rage, calling Wanasoi names. It seems to the teenager that the thief did it on purpose. Gumon turns around and sees that he is no longer in the place where Wanasoi was sitting. The boy is angry that the thief has not only set them up, but is also nowhere to be found. While Gumon is in a rage, swinging his fists and calling Wanasoi names, he wishes he had never shown up again. Haran is behind the boy's back, calmly stashing his sword in its scabbard. Haran lowers his head in thought. The boy raises his head sharply, staring upward. A dried-up tree with no foliage can be seen on the roof of the temple. The chained almond sits under a white tree. The sad boy lowered his head. Almond looks up sharply when he hears someone say that the creep pushed Haran on purpose, to which the guy replies that he doubts it. Almond looks up the stairs. Tumon, walking next to Haran, continues to discuss the thief who pretended to want to help, but apparently felt that nothing would work, and then pushed the kid to escape. Haran silently listens to the kid, and Puya bounces over the ladder, having been on the roof faster than anyone else. Gumon continues to be angry that Vandasoa almost got them slaughtered. Haran sighs in shock, looking straight ahead. Amen is amazed at what he sees. Gumon is surprised to see that the boy is really here. Haran jumps up from his seat. Amen asks the hero standing around him how they got here. Haran draws his sword from its sheath and asks the teenager not to move. The hero inserts the blade between the links of the chain restraining the prisoner. In one sharp movement, the chain is shattered and the shackles fall. Gumon and Puya look at Amen, who is rubbing his wrists, tucking his blade into its scabbard. Haran asks the boy if he can walk. The boy answers in the affirmative, but his voice trembles. Haran tells Amen that it is time for them to go. The kid's pretty surprised. Amen has tears in his eyes. Gumon hurries the boy, explaining that they have very little time. Amen waves his hands hurriedly and agrees. The boy wipes his tears and says he's ready to go. Haran quickly heads for the stairs. Suddenly he stops after hearing a suspicious noise. The hero gazes into the darkness. Haran sees the bright red, intimidating eyes light up in the darkness. The boy recoils fearfully. Someone's sharp blow sends Haran flying. Guy manages to land on his feet. A large foot and a huge blade come into view of the heroes. Gumon and Amen recoil, and Puya adopts a fighting stance. Gumon clenches his hands into fists. A frightened Amen's eyes rounded. Haran leans on his sword. Puya growls menacingly, baton in hand. Nurin with burning eyes and a huge sword says that Haran managed to defeat Arsul and even Tanzir. Looking menacingly at his enemies, Nurin says that now the guy is going to get his hands on the 1,000-year-old grass as well. Holding his sword in front of him, Haran speaks the name of the enemy menacingly. Nurin raises his hand with his blade, and with his other hand rests on a depression in the roof, and rocks begin to rise into the air from his magic. Haran is puzzled and stands still as Nurin makes a sudden leap forward and promises that he will send the princess the head of a pesky enemy. Haran swings a blade. The hero, grinning, rushes into battle, but Nurin freezes beside him when someone commands him to stop. Nurin turns around puzzled. Haran is also surprised. Gumon and Amen look at Wanasoi looking calm. Leaning on the log the boy was chained to, Thief demands elder woman to stop. Putting the blade away, the bully asks the guy when he came back and says that everyone was waiting for him. The guy apologizes and heads towards the man the heroes mistook for Nurin. Haran looks at both of them questioningly. The hero is trying to figure out what's going on because it's obvious that these two know each other. The bully announces that they have finally found a way to cure a long-standing illness. He calls the guy Chairman Nurin. Thief replies that he's already told everyone that he doesn't need it and he doesn't want anything. Haran is shocked. Sweat appears on his face. A small shiver hits him as he tries to understand what is going on here. The hero realizes that this man is Nurin. Gumon is also shocked by what is happening. He can't understand how this guy could be Nurin. Standing next to Gumon, Puya points his finger at the guy, who turns out to be Nurin, and calls him a bigot. The boy stands silently between the bulky man and Haran. Woman says in anger that he will not let what they have been searching for so long go to waste, and promises to bring Nurin the 1,000-year-old herb without further ado. The boy looks unconcerned as he covers his eyes and tells the bully that he is still as impatient as ever despite having grown old. Nurin reassures woman that he is fine and has lived long enough. Haran looks at the guy questioningly, not sure what he's talking about. Nurin stands next to the bulky man with a calm expression on his face, arms crossed over his chest. Woman clutches his blade with both hands and says he won't back down just because Nurin doesn't want him to. The thug warns the chairman not to try to stop him. Covering his eyes, Nurin turns to elder woman. Gramila interrupts the guy without letting him finish his sentence and yells in anger that he doesn't understand how many times it takes to make Nurin realize that if he dies, the Rocky Mountain region will disappear too. Nurin lowers his eyes in silence, standing between the bulky man and Haran. The boy says he has thought of a way to settle the dispute. He proposes a fight, and the one whose back touches the ground first of the two of them will have to fulfill the other's request. Nurin offers to give the answer. Woman grudgingly agrees. Haran reflects on the fact that this is very unexpected. Nurin calls out to Haran questioningly. The hero thinks about the fact that he has no choice but to fight the bully. Out loud, he says he agrees. Nurin concludes with a smile, which means they have a deal. Raising his hand, the guy motions for the fighters to get ready. Woman's icy stare is directed at his opponent. His gaze meets Haran's determined stare. The fighters hear Nurin's order to start the fight. The bulldog fiercely rushes to the attack. Woman swings his sword, while Haran tries to execute a slashing kick. The hero is actively rearing to go. Thunderbolt and Haran enter the fray, grinning furiously. Their blades cross. Woman stares down his opponent with ferocity. While trying to fend off the enemy's attack, Haran realizes that his opponent is very bloodthirsty, which means the fight won't be easy. Nurin, Kumon, and Puya are watching from the sidelines. Haran manages to dodge a punch from his opponent. Nurin, with his usual indifferent expression, asks Kumon who he thinks will win. The boy hesitates. Confused, Woman with burning eyes intends to tear his opponent apart. Nurin comments that in this fight, on one side is a martial arts veteran with combat experience and a high level of skill, looking at Haran desperately rearing to fight. Nurin comments that on the other side is an unknown nameless swordsman. He asks Kumon that if he had to bet his life on winning, who would he choose? Kumon hesitates and can't answer, but then says he would choose a veteran. Nurin is surprised and interjects if this is true, and then immediately replies that he would have put his life on the smarter side. Haran jumps up over the bulky man, preparing to strike. Woman is filled with rage. Haran is determined. Puya, Kumon, and Nurin watch the battle unfold. The teenager questions the boy about his decision to bet on the smarter side. Nurin answers in the affirmative. Kumon skeptically argues that this solution might be true if the opponent's forces are equal. Nurin asks the teenager defiantly if he wants to say that Haran will lose. Watching Haran manage to stay on his feet after being hit, Kumon replies that that's not what he was talking about, but still the difference in their strength is huge. He says that in addition, Haran fought constantly on the way here and has used up a lot of strength. Nurin replies that if it's true, maybe he should be more objective. Kumon looks at the boy with a sidelong glance. Amun, who is standing next to him, is alarmed. With a loud shout, Woman rushes to the attack and Nurin describes his abilities. The boy says that the elder has vast combat experience and exceptional stamina. He is as fast as his opponent and fights with a personal style of hand-to-hand combat. Squinting his eyes, Kumon grudgingly notes that Woman is too perfect. As he watches Haran cleaving the stones flying at him with his sword, Nurin comments that the boy is very fast and good with a sword. After a moment's thought, he asks what other qualities Haran has that are useful in battle. Nurin, Kumon, Puya, and Amun stand at the foot of the tree. Kumon says that Haran has absolutely nothing that can give him an advantage in battle. Nurin replies that it is only what they see on the surface. Guy says it's really what the eye can't see that determines the winners. Kumon is skeptical of the guy's words, but remains silent. Haran bounces over his opponent, avoiding injury. Nurin says that when the weak can overpower the strong or a smaller number of warriors, defeat the majority, it is called strategy. Kumon squints at Nurin, who says with a smile that out of the two of them, he will bet on the one whose strategy proves to be better. Kumon grudgingly reflects on the fact that Nurin never clearly said who he thought would win. Nurin's gaze expresses no emotion. Haran's eyes gleam like steel. The boy is confident and eager to fight. Nurin thinks about the fact that he likes this look of Haran's. Guy manages to stay on his feet after a thudding body kick by Woman pushes him backwards. The elder twirls the blade in his hands and snickers gloatingly, not considering his opponent a worthy fighter. Trying to catch his breath, Haran thinks about the fact that his opponent lacks the weaknesses that someone so huge would have. Woman leaps, raising his blade above him. A hole forms beneath the thug's feet, rocks flying out of it. Haran thinks about the fact that his enemy doesn't follow the attack patterns of the monsters he's fought before. Woman makes a sharp jump, and only a cloud of dust remains where he was standing. Haran is shocked. The hero clenches his teeth and holds his enemy's blade with his last strength. The elder says that it has been a long time since anyone has been able to resist his attacks like this. A bead of vapor appears on Haran's face. He realizes that the pressure is building. Woman angrily urges Haran to die sooner rather than later. The elder makes a strong attack, causing the rocks to fly apart. When the dust settles, only Woman's silhouette is visible. Haran is upset that the warriors have ruined the roof of the temple, but his expression remains indifferent. Woman looks away. Haran is still on his feet. He tries to catch his breath and thinks about the fact that he has to evade the attacks at all costs. Looking at his opponent, Woman says that his opponent is fast, but will he be able to last longer, and how long can he run away? The elder swings his blade behind the back of a worried Haran. The hero is focused. Woman lands a jab to the body that just misses his opponent. Haran manages to sidestep a lightning-fast jab, attacking the guy waiting to attack. Woman says that now they're going to see how far his opponent can go. The elder with burning eyes makes another strike. Using a special skill, Haran avoids the attack. The guy realizes that this attack is too strong for him to resist, and his body will quickly find itself overwhelmed. Haran thinks about overloading the body. Looking away, he ponders the idea that has arisen. Looking at the aggressive enemy with burning eyes, Haran thinks about the fact that it is possible to make the enemy's body experience overload after all. Haran runs, realizing that this is the way out and there is no need to rush now, because winning via knockout is not the only way. The hero moves lightning fast around his enemy, while Woman doesn't realize what's happening. Turning around sharply, Woman says that having Haran run off like that is unbecoming of a warrior. The elder snaps from where he was. Using a special skill, he tries to catch up to a fleeing opponent. Haran spots his opponent from side vision. Woman lands a sharp punch that throws the guy backwards. The elder asks with a sneer what has happened to his opponent's forces now. He says sarcastically that he is beginning to be disappointed in Haran. Woman snaps out of it again. Haran tries to escape using a special technique. The elder watches his movements. The thug turns the other way. He looks after the fleeing Haran. Sparks of anger flashed in the elder's red eyes. Woman turns around sharply again. The thug screams in rage, calling his opponent a dodgy bastard. Swinging his sword, Woman leaps in an attempt to catch up to the fleeing Haran, and shouts that he will destroy everything so much that his opponent will have nowhere to run. Haran decides it's time to act. The boy abruptly turns around and rushes towards the attacking elder. While attacking, Haran uses a dissecting strike. Woman takes no damage and swings his blade. Looking down at Haran from above with a disdainful look, the bulky man says with a sneer that it's really sad if the guy was just aiming for his legs. Haran doesn't move. Haran says regretfully that the guy is unlucky because Woman is an expert in amplification, almost like Tanzir, so most attacks won't hurt him. Gumon shouts anxiously. Amen and Puyo watch anxiously. Amen is worried because everything happened because of him. Woman smiles gloatingly, informing Haran that he is finished. The elder swings his huge blade while Haran remains standing still. Suddenly, Woman cries out in pain. The elder begins to stagger and falls to his knee. The thug stands before Haran, dropping to one knee and holding his blade. Woman is in a panic trying to figure out what happened to his legs. Standing in front of his opponent, who has his head down, Haran says that he's the one who will meet his end. The boy looks down at the elder. Grinning, the thug menacingly tells the enemy not to make him laugh. Woman's face contorts into a grimace of rage as he says that he can deal with someone like Haran with one left. Suddenly, the hero applies a dissecting strike, and Woman falls backwards to the ground. From the powerful impact, a crater forms underneath the elder. Haran smiles happily. Gumon is happy. Puya smiles sincerely. Amen is surprised by what has happened. Gumon shouts joyfully that Haran has won. Amen and Puya do not hide their joy, smiling widely. Haran exhales with relief. Haran's eyes round in surprise, calling Haran lousy. He thinks about the fact that he used the bulky man's heavy weight to overload his knees and do damage. The elder's bones are badly damaged. Haran thinks about the fact that although it can't be seen from the outside, Woman's knees have sustained considerable damage on the inside. Haran notices a great excitement behind him. He feels his heart beating loudly. He thinks that he felt this feeling for the first time since Lear Yon's death. Haran's eyes rounded even more at the realization. His heart beats louder and louder. The guy clenches his hand into a fist. Haran smiles as his friends run up to him congratulating him on his victory. Amen stands beside him. Gumon shakes his fist. Smiling cheerfully, a joyful Puya smiles, Jumping on Haran's back, the heroes are on the half-destroyed roof of the temple after the battle. Looking at the hero, Kumon waves his fists and with a satisfied smile says that it was very cool and he was worried about Haran. Amon smiles and Puya runs towards Haran. The barbarian girl jumps on Haran's back again and waves her club, exclaiming happily in her language that he is very strong. Lowering his head, the boy exhales and modestly agrees. Kumon emotionally asks how Haran managed to defeat woman, since it looked like there was no way to approach him. Kumon hears someone reply in Haran's place that he has created a weakness. Nurin explains that the faster one changes direction, the more strain it puts on the other's legs, and the more one weighs, the greater the strain becomes, which is what Haran was trying to achieve. Standing next to Haran, Kumon looks at Nurin with interest. Haran says that it is more important now to understand who their companion is and if he is really Nurin. The guy replies with an ironic smile that he has his own environment here. Haran is angry, remembering his first encounter with the thief who stole and read the letter. Nurin apologizes with a smile. Haran and Kumon get really mad at the guy. Suddenly, an angry woman appears in front of them in a column of dust, trying to catch his breath. Nurin stands calmly still. Ahmed is frightened. Haran is ready to fight back. Kumon clenches his fists and cries out in alarm. Puya holds his baton in front of him and assumes a fighting stance. Haran's gaze looks confident. Kumon looks scared, but he's trying not to show it. Puya squints his eyes, determined to do battle. Amon is greatly disturbed. The expression on the elder's face looks angry. Against the background of Amon and Kumon, the figure of Nurin stands out. The guy's not moving. Woman's red eyes poured with rage. With a disgruntled hum, the bulky man abruptly turns around and walks away. Haran stares after him, and Kumon exhales in relief. Haran was alarmed by the harsh sound. Turning around, he sees Amon, who cries out in pain, crouching on the ground and clutching his stomach. Kumon asks the teenager what happened. Sitting down next to Amon, Haran asks him what ails him. Crouching and shaking, the boy replies that his stomach hurts. Amon's face twists in a grimace of pain. The boy says it happened suddenly. Haran is alarmed, asking what could have happened out of the blue. Nurin confidently states that the boy must have eaten the seed. Standing next to Amon, Haran excitedly interjects. Nurin calmly says that judging from Amon's condition, he has an hour to live at most. Haran anxiously asks what will happen in an hour. Lowering his head, Nurin explains that the sprout will then pierce the boy's stomach, and he will thrash in agony and eventually die. Haran interjects shocked, leaning over Amon, who is huddled on the ground in pain, and placing his hand on the boy's back. Haran asks Nurin to help and tell them how they can get rid of the seed. Nurin reminds him with a smile that Haran won the duel he proposed and interjects if that's what the hero really wants. Haran replies in the affirmative and asks Nurin to save Amon. Nurin wonders why Haran would want to do this, since he came here because of the Rocky Autonomous Region Alliance. But he's trying to save some kid he doesn't even know. A determined Haran replies that the reason is because someone is dying in front of his eyes. And is there any other reason needed? Nurin is shocked by this answer. He recalls a girl who answered the same way when asked about the reason for helping. Nurin is silent. He then raises his hand, in which a magical light glows. The guy promises to help. Above Nurin's calm, glowing orbs fly in a haze. Haran is surprised and thinks about it being a white glow. Nurin puts his hand on Amon's pain-stricken face and begins to recount what happened to him a long time ago. Amon cries out in pain. Swallowing, Nurin tells me that a woman once saved him when he was on death's doorstep. Guy explains that through her, he was able to gain a special power of harmony and healing called white harmony. Amon's face is covered with sweat. The boy tries to catch his breath. Haran is amazed at what he has just heard. Amon exhales with relief and greedily gulps air with his mouth. Nurin smiles, pointing a finger at himself. The guy says that, paradoxical as it may sound, he cannot cure his own ailment. Standing opposite Amon, Nurin folds his hands at his waist and informs him that there is no more seed inside the boy. Haran anxiously asks the rising Amon if he is okay. Kumon and Puya watch from behind Haran. Exhaling, Amon closes his eyes. Tilting his head, he answers Haran's question in the affirmative. The hero holds the boy from the back. Standing opposite a satisfied Nurkin, Amon asks him why he did so. Amon explains in bewilderment that Nurin should also want the 1,000-year-old herb. Since he is sick, Haran is also interested in the answer to this question. Nurin closes his eyes in silence. Amon looks up, waiting for an answer. Nurkin confidently replies that he doesn't need the medicine. The guys standing opposite him are surprised and ask again. Nurin explains that he has already eaten a 1,000-year-old herb once. Amon is shocked. Standing across from the boys, Nurin raises his gaze to the sun. The lad tells that in the days when he lost the war and wondered, on the verge of life and death, he was rescued by a woman of the Lee tribe. Amin is amazed at what he hears, introducing a red-haired, smiling girl in a gray dress with a blue cape. Nurin says her name was Sue, and she was a very kind-hearted person, with only a younger brother left of her family. Nurkin recalls how a girl leaned over him, bandaged and bloody, and wiped his face with a cloth. He says that even with such care, he realized then that he would not be able to live for long. But something happened. The boy is immersed in memories, visualizing the black moon. Barefoot Nurhan, in light clothing, stepped out of the house, leaning on crutches and looking up at the sky. The guy with the bandaged head looked in the direction where someone's voice was coming from, reminding him that he wasn't allowed to go out. A girl stood in front of him, her red hair and bow in it waving in the breeze. The smiling Sue's eyes were the same color as her hair. As she clutched the flower pot to her chest, she reminded Nurhan that someone might see him here. Nurhan hummed skeptically, looking at the girl silently. Sue felt sad when she realized that the guy didn't believe in his recovery. Nurhan turned back to Luna. The girl smiled. Her smile grew wider when a pink flower but with a yellow core appeared in the flower pot Sue was holding. The girl said she had good news for Nurhan. Sue explained that if the boy ate this flower surrounded by radiance, he could recover and then his body would be the same as it was before. The heroes listen attentively to Nurhan's story. Haran asks if it was a 1,000-year-old herb. Nurkin answers in the affirmative. The boy continues his story. He recalls how the next day he left the house completely healthy, throwing away the crutches and bandages that were no longer necessary. The time before seemed like a dream to Nurkin, because not only was his body the same, but he even felt stronger than before. Nurkin recalls holding the girl by the shoulders. He asked her why she had done so much to save him. In front of the guy's eyes is a picture of a girl taking his hand. He remembered that Sue's answer was always the same. Holding Nurhan's hand in hers, Sue asks if she needs a reason to do this. Nurhan is very surprised. The girl holds Nurkin's swarthy hand in her fair hands. The guy exhales with relief and smiles. Nurhan says that the next day he went out of the house, but Sue was nowhere to be found. The next days the girl also did not come, and realizing that something was wrong, the guy decided to go in search of her. Nurhan's hand touches the rock from which he is about to jump. A guy in dark clothes, revealing only his eyes, jumps onto the roof of the settlement's gate, which is between the rocks. He exhales silently. Two guards with long spears stand at the gate. Nurhan holds onto the tight rope. The guy's getting ready to jump. He's wearing an assassin's headdress. Nurhan takes a sharp jump while holding onto the rope. Guy swings on the rope, going unnoticed by the guards. Nurhan lands on one of the taller rocks. The guy looks down at the armed guards. He's thinking about the fact that there's no choice. Making another quick jump, the guy knocks out both guards at the same time. The guy sees a long corridor in front of him with makeshift windows in the walls and light in front. Nurhan runs down the cavernous corridor. The light is getting closer and closer. The tunnel exit approaches, and the space fills with bright light. Walking up to one of the windows, the guy exhales. Steam comes out of his mouth. Nurhan's breathing quickens, and his eyes widen with horror. The guy sees a bloody Sue. The girl's neck is bound with a thick chain. Sue is fainted, and her face and chain are covered in blood. Nurhan's eyes light up with anger. An unidentified man raises a tattooed hand, putting a finger up. He calls himself a trusted god, pointing with his hand at the eclipse. A man who looks like a priest says he saw his tribe being destroyed at the peak of destiny, where the sun and moon meet. The man is dressed in a gray robe with a purple collar, with a massive gold ornament. His white face has his eyes and lips highlighted with black paint, and the same symbol painted on his forehead as on his wrist. The priest loudly asserts that the collapse of the tribe can be averted by sacred sacrificial offerings. A man with an intimidating face orders me to watch. With his hands raised with a scepter, the priest stands beside a large, dry tree. Beside him stand two thuggish guards in similarly colored robes, but their faces are covered with cloth. The priest is watched by a multitude of men clad in cloaks. A red-haired boy in a long, tattered skirt is tied to a tree by his hands. Cracks are spreading from the guy's chest to the tree, with golden lights flickering near them. Leaning on the tree trunk, Sue is lying on the grass. The priest shouts that the reason they could prosper lies in the flower of the sacred altar. This flower the tribe offers to the god, pointing his finger at Sue. The priest shouts that, unfortunately, sinners have appeared among them, who are preventing the presence of the god in the tribe. The tribesmen weep in sorrow, wiping the tears rolling down their cheeks. The priest reaches out and points his finger at the girl. He asks what they should do with these ignoramuses. Sue is still not regaining consciousness. Angry peasants wave their hands clenched into fists and chorus calls to kill the renegades. The face of the priest approaches Sue. Sue opens his eyes slightly, licking the blood from her face. The priest whispers that if she had agreed to bear his child, both the girl and her brother would be safe. But now that is out of the question. Sue croaks, clenching his teeth. The priest demands that the girl tell him where her brother's flower is hidden. Sue replies in a weak voice that she burned everything. The priest calls the girl a hellcat in anger. He punches Sue hard, demanding an answer to the question of where she hid the flower. Blood spatters all around. The priest hears some sound. He turns around and looks puzzled. The dead guards are burning in white flames. Nurin stands next to them in a white glow. The priest's eyes widen in surprise as he realizes he sees a white flame in front of him. Flashes of white glowing energy erupted near Nurin. The shocked priest begins to suspect that the guy ate a 1,000-year-old herb. Nurin looks away. He sees Sue in an unconscious state. The guy looks up. He sees a kid with a plant sprouting from his chest and realizes that this kid is Sue's brother. Nurin thinks angrily about how they could do such a thing to a child. The boy squints his eyes. He sees a bloody wound on the boy's chest, from which a plant is bursting through. Nurin begins to realize what this means. The boy closes his eyes, remembering how Sue held out to him the flower that healed him. Nurin realizes that the flower he ate grew out of that boy's body. The guy's face contorts in a grimace of pain and frustration, pointing his finger at Nurin and calling the guy a bastard. The priest loudly commands to kill him. The mummy warriors draw their blades and rush into battle. Nurin presses his lips together and thinks about what has happened. The boy scolds himself for being so happy about his healing that he didn't even realize it. White flame erupts when a guy thinks about how he's never been more disgusted with himself than he's experienced at this moment. Narkin's eyes turn red white. Magical flashes of white flame shoot out from them. The priest is shocked. He doesn't understand how this can be. Narkin is burning with white flames. Dead soldiers lie around him. The priest doesn't understand how the guy could instantly massacre the soldiers who ate the 1,000-year-old flowers. A guy treads barefoot on the grass. A tall white flame blazes around him. The terrified priest falls on his back, dropping his staff. Nurin walks past him, leaving a trail of flame behind him. The guy grabs the chain restraining Sue's neck with his hand. In one motion, he pulls the chain off, and the girl opens her eyes, grabbing the girl by the shoulder. The guy asks with an angry look why she did it. Nurin screams in rage, trying to understand why Sue saved him. The weakened girl expresses hope that Nurin can continue to live for her brother. Nurin's eyes round with shock. He asks again. The girl closes her eyes in silence. Nurin thinks about what happened to Sue. The guy realizes that something is wrong with the girl because her body is frowning. The priest rests his hands on the ground with his head down. He is startled when he sees Nurin coming towards him. The boy abruptly grabs the priest by the neck, lifting him up. The man begins to cough, and Nurin panics, asking what he has done to Sue and demanding that the priest return her to her former state. Clenching her teeth, the priest replies that it is too late because the seed has sprouted through her body. Nurin interjects, still not understanding. The guy's gaze changes direction. He sees a light bursting from the girl's chest. The guy's eyes rounded in surprise. The priest coughs, rolling his eyes. A pink flower of the 1,000-year-old grass sprouted from Sue's chest. Nurin's eyes rounded with shock. The flower grows larger and its roots spread over the girl's body. Standing near the tree where Sue and her brother had died, Nurin snatches the priest's head and throws it aside. The man's body falls to the ground. Nurin's gaze is filled with anger. The guy recalls Sue's words about her not needing a reason to save him. Nurin closes his eyes, shaking his head. A glowing flower sprouts from the dead girl's body. The flashback ends. Nurin stands in front of a surprised Haran, Guman, Pooja and Aman. Guman is shocked by what he hears. Poya reacts more calmly. Aman lowers his head sadly. Haran remembers meeting Nurin in the cave and begins to guess that the general the guy mentioned that time is himself. Nurin closes his eyes silently, folding his arms across his chest. Guman is puzzled. He thinks about the fact that if the guy survived the war between the northern and southern armies, then how many years has he lived? The heroes are standing opposite Nurin when Haran asks him why the guy told them a story that is different from reality. Nurin replies with a smile that is simple. Closing his eyes, he explains that he no longer wants the Lee tribe to be harmed, but realizes that he has failed in this task. Aman puzzled. With his head down, the boy thinks about the fact that his tribe destroyed itself, and Nurhan was actually the one who wanted to hide them so that there would be no more sacrifices. Understanding the boy's worries, Haran puts his hand on his shoulder. Haran smiles good-naturedly. Amen looks at him. Nurhan's gaze is devoid of emotion, keeping his hand on the shoulder of a surprised Amen. Haran thanks Nurhan with a smile for saving the kid. Nurhan is surprised. A wry smile appears on his face when Nurhan informs him that he will go with the heroes to meet the princess. Haran is astonished. He asks why Nurhan is going to do this. Waving his hand, Nurhan replies with a smile. Doesn't he need a reason to do so? Guman and Puya are happy. Haran watches as Nurhan, Amen, Guman, and Puya start walking down the stairs. Guman says with a smile that it is very steep, and Nurhan asks him to show him the way. Haran exhales in relief. Closing his eyes, the guy opens his eyes abruptly when he hears the familiar sound of a game notification. A notification appears on the screen that the third test quest has been successfully completed. Haran stares in surprise at the message, which congratulates the hero on successfully completing the third quest, and informs him that he has received a fragment of the returned stone, as well as a hidden skill. The boy's eyes round with surprise when he hears about the new hidden skill. At this time, there is sunny weather over the princess' residence. Looking out the window, Sun is surprised to notice something in the distance. He is shocked by what he sees, not realizing what it is. Yuta is sitting at her desk writing something on paper when she hears Sun's concerned voice, suggesting that she go to the window and see for herself. The princess is questioningly silent. Yuta and Sun are standing at the window. The warrior points with an outstretched hand in the distance, suggesting that the princess look in that direction. The princess silently tries to consider what Sun is pointing at. The girl is amazed at what she sees. A huge tamed elephant with decorated tusks and head walks towards the fort. A reclining Erkin, a joyful Gumon, and a pensive Haran and Amen ride on the elephant in a special tent. A huge elephant approaches the gate. A ladder descends from the tent on its back. The people of the city flank the outlandish animal on all sides. The guards look out from the roof to see what is happening. The elephant is breathing loudly and steam is coming off his mouth. Surprised guards are startled by the sight of the giant animal. There is silence. The windows in the princess's workroom are closed. There is a teapot and a cup on the table. Nurkan sits at the table, leaning back in his chair and folding his arms across his chest. There is a cup on the table next to him. The boy asks the princess what she wants. Yuta is sitting at the table. There is also a cup next to her. Behind the princess are Haran and Sunday. Haran looks at the princess, silently waiting for an answer. Sun looks straight ahead with a confident gaze. And Haso is silently holding onto his cane. His face expresses no emotion. Yuta sits at the table opposite Nurhan, who has one leg relaxed over the other. Next to the girl sits a Haso, with Sun and Haran standing behind her. The princess says confidently that she would like to offer Nurhan an alliance that will last for 5 years. Nurhan is skeptical. He says there will be no benefit to his people in this alliance. The princess explains that this situation is only as it is at present, but things could change at any time. She suggests including a condition that the Rocky Autonomous Region be allowed to become a separate region from the kingdom. Covering his eyes, Nurhan says it's not a very attractive condition. Yuta pressed her lips together in silence. Sun, Haran, and Ahaso frown, similarly pursing their lips. Nurhan says indifferently that they are in the way of at least 5 lords of the kingdom, and that number may increase over time. He also voices that though Yuta is the only legitimate representative of the royal authority, she has a limited number of soldiers and uncontrollable barbarians at her command. So Nurhan sees no need to put himself in so much danger. The princess's gaze turns steely. The 4 men look at Nurhan, who asks the princess if she has thought about what he just voiced. Yuta silently lowers her head. Lowering his eyes, Haran thinks about the fact that he had hoped for Nurhan's friendly attitude. Nurhan's hand lifts the cup from the table. The guy's gaze looks piercing as he voices his thoughts about the princess, looking like she's in danger. Sitting in a chair and folding her hands in her lap, Yuta feels as if there is an endless abyss beneath her. Nurhan rises, putting his hands on the table. He says that if he stays a little longer, they will start discussing boring things. So it's time to leave. The guy freezes in place and interjects when Yuta says it's not just about her, but everyone in the room. The princess says confidently that she is not the only one in danger. But Nurhan, along with the people of Rocky Mountain, are in danger as well. Nurhan asks what Yuta wants to say with that. The princess imagines Jad, with burning red eyes, reaching his hand toward the map on which the 5 figures are located. She explains that Jad has made the lords of all the major cities his men, so that he will have a stable power within the kingdom. Yuta suggests that the rocky autonomous region could be the sixth. Nurin listens intently to Yuta when she says that he can definitely survive, but are his subordinates and the common people capable of doing so? Covering his eyes, Nurin smugly declares that even if what he says is true, it would still be safer than siding with the princess. He asks what Yuta can guarantee his people. The princess replies confidently that her guarantee will be the future. Sitting on a chair, Yuta looks confidently at Nurin standing in front of her. She sees nothing around her as she asks her companion if his people will be truly free under the power derived from countless sacrifices, and if Nurin can ensure them a future with more freedom than they have now. A slight smile appears on Nurin's face. He takes a step forward. Nurin stops beside a cane holding Akaso, a pensive son, a disgruntled Haran, and a determined princess. Yuta looks confident in her words. Smiling broadly, Nurin says that King Ale has left behind a real treasure, and agrees to the princess' proposal. Nurin touches the girl's hand. Yuta places her hand on Nurin's arm in a reciprocal gesture. The princess smiles contentedly. A surprised Haran stands beside her. Nurin smilingly tells the girl that the rocky autonomous region will go hand in hand with her. Yuta replies with a friendly smile that the royal family of Ayula will go hand in hand with the rocky autonomous region. Looking at the princess, Haran smiles happily. He closes his eyes and exhales with relief. A drink is poured from a container in his hand. Someone cheerfully offers a drink. A smiling Nurin waves his hand, in which he holds a container of drink. He sits at the oval table next to the princess, holding a small bowl. Across from him raises the bowl is a joyful Gumon. Behind Yuta's back stands a serious Sunday. Around it long tables sit warriors who raise their bows, supporting Nurin's offer with joyful shouts. The warriors laugh as they hold out their drinking bowls to each other. The princess smiles, happy that everything resolved so perfectly. Sun looks serious as he observes the situation around him. Someone loudly asks him for more. Nurin laughs loudly and happily, picking up the container of drink. Kuman is eating something from his plate with chopsticks. Puya bites the chicken leg he is holding in his hand. Between them, a confused almond sits at the table. On the table are containers of drinks, a dish of hot chicken and a dish of fish. At another table, other warriors sit with their backs to the warriors. Almond looks around anxiously. Kuman with his mouth full asks Almond why he doesn't eat and isn't it delicious. Nurin rises from the table and waves to some unknown warrior sitting at another table. Puya pays no attention to anything but the food. Almond replies to Kuman with a smile that he has just never seen so many people. The interlocutor replies that he had forgotten that Almond lived hiding in a cave. Kuman skeptically asks if Almond is really going to go back. Almond replies with a friendly smile that is, but Nurin has prepared another place where he will live. Looking away, Kuman says it's great. Almond also looks down at his plate in embarrassment. Kuman grabs the noodles with his chopsticks and thoughtfully asks where the protagonist of this feast is. Haran sits at the entrance to the building, looking at the blue light in his hands. The boy stares intently at the part of the blue stone hovering above his hand. Haran's gaze focused. Haran flinches when he hears someone ask what he's doing here. Sitting down next to Haran, Nurin suggests that the hero does not like to be in crowds. Haran replies that it felt a little stuffy. Nurin reasons that Haran should still show up at the party so that he can do what he needs to do in the future. Haran silently pondered. Nurin looks at Haran. The guy looks at his interlocutor in surprise, who says that every time he looks at Haran, he reminds him of someone, as their eyes are very similar. Sitting in the lotus posture next to Haran, Nurin says he has never seen the face of the man he is talking about, as he was always wearing a mask. Nurin's face blushes as he remembers the warrior with dark clothes, a red mask and long black hair tied in a braid. Nurin says that when they first fought, the warrior asked him what kind of death he would want for himself. Nurin reasoned that people have asked themselves this question at least once in their lives, but for some reason he was unable to give an answer. Looking level-headed, Nurin says he wondered then if he had become immune to death. Haran stares in surprise at Nurin's hand, from which a transparent white light is coming off. Nurin holds his hand in front of him, which glows with white flames and magical lights come from it. Nurin admits that he feels sick every time he uses his ability. Haran's eyes rounded in surprise. Nurin sharply clenches his hand into a fist along with the magical fire. He says that at that moment, he found the answer to the unknown warrior's question. With a sigh, resting his hands on his knees and lowering his head, Nurin rises to his feet. Haran looks at his interlocutor attentively. Nurin waves his hand without turning around and says that he will go back. Haran, pensive, does not look after his interlocutor. Smiling crookedly, Nurin says that he has a couple more stubborn men to persuade. He suggests that Haran meet him on the battlefield. Haran looks at his interlocutor in surprise. The hero leans back, leaning on his hands, and looks up, sitting at the entrance to the building. It's been a week. The sky is covered with dark clouds. Bright lightning bolts pierce the dark sky. A heavy downpour begins, flooding the road towards town. Someone's foot slaps on the puddles. On top of a mountain, a girl in a red and white short dress, with blades behind her back and a huge hat with long ribbons, stands in a puddle. Standing in the rain, she looks up at the gates of the city. On top of the fortress, soldiers are standing in the rain. A girl looks down from under the brim of a tall hat. The stranger has bright blue eyes. She hears loud raindrops. A week has passed since becoming allies with Nurhan. The weather is sunny. A traveler with a horse, carrying a bundle of belongings on his back, moves along the road through the forest towards the fortress. Yuta is sitting at her desk. Next to her is a Hasso. Standing by the window is Sun, who is looking at the princess. He says that only 30 people have joined the army so far. The effects of the alliance with the rocky autonomous region are starting to show. But it's not enough, and cooperation from the cities is needed to strengthen the alliance. Lowering her thoughtful gaze, the princess agrees, but says it won't be easy to get the viceroys to move because of Jod. Sun's look becomes determined. He says then they need to get them to cooperate. Yuta replies with a cold stare that they won't do that, because even if it's hard, they don't have to follow the same path as Jod. With a hum, Sun folds his arms across his chest and covers his eyes. He says then the first thing they should do is send letters to the viceroys and ask for their cooperation. Yuta silently lowers her eyes, and Hasso says with a sly smile that if they can get their hands on the 3 disappearing treasures of the Ayula kingdom, the situation will be very different. The expression on the princess' face becomes surprised when she remembers about the 3 treasures of the royal family, and Hasso says that if they have the well and true symbol of the king in their hands, the viceroys will not ignore them. He presents the ruler with a shining sharp blue pendant, a massive ring, and an unusual ornamented sword in his hand. The princess says that all the treasure disappeared after her father died, and even Jod, who was so desperate to find it, couldn't find anything. And Hasso replies that they won't be easy to find, but is sure that King Ea would have left them in a place that the princess would know about. Yuta silently lowers her head and ponders what this place could be that she knows of. Suddenly there is a knock on the door. Yuta, sitting at the table, invites a person to enter. Behind the princess stands Sun with his arms folded across his chest. The warrior standing in the doorway addresses Sun, calling him the captain of the royal guard. He says that the preparations for the trial are complete. Sun interjects to ask if that's really true. The princess turns to Sun, who responds by turning around. Yuta with a smile asks Swena to go there with Haran. Sun puzzledly agrees. Haran looks out the window, leaning on the window frame. The guy looks serious. He lowers his head and looks at the vial of liquid in his hand. The blue vial with leather strap is securely corked. Guy recalls Yuta handing him this vial, saying that he was able to accomplish a great feat. Holding the vial in his hands, Haran asked what it was. The princess replied that it was the peel of the 9 cycles. Haran interjected in surprise. Yuta explained with a smile that it was an elixir handed down by the divine healer Hwatwa. The princess said that there were rumors that the healer had perfected this elixir 9 times, and if a person took it, his mind would be purified and his body would become light as a feather. Haran said thank you to the princess with a grateful smile. The girl replied with a wide smile that she should be the one thanking him. She thanked the guy sincerely. Haran recalls this conversation while looking at the vial of elixir. The guy smiles contentedly. He is surprised when he hears someone's loud breathing in the yard. Gumon raises his sword. Swinging it, the boy commits to the punch. Practicing. He's breathing loudly. Haran watches the kid practice and thinks about how hard he's practicing. The hero is surprised to hear the sound of a game message. Haran is standing near a window where a game message appears with a mission to go to Iron City. It is indicated that this is the first of a 3-part mission. A fragment of the Stone of Return is promised as a reward. Haran wonders where this Iron City is located. The guy turns around when he hears a knock on the door. He politely allows the guest to enter. Sun opens the door with a smile and asks Haran what he's doing. The guy confusedly replies that he didn't do anything. A smiling Sun says that since Haran isn't doing anything, he'd like the guy to go with him to the military camp to show him something there. Haran is confused, but happily agrees. Sun quickly leaves, asking Haran to follow him. The boy looks at the door in bewilderment. The hero exhales with a smile. 4 bound logs are chopped with a single movement of the blade. A thud with a huge blade stands beside them. The other warriors are shocked and marvel at the toughness of the bulky man. The warrior croaks contentedly. Haran stands next to Sun, arms crossed over his chest. They stand apart, watching the warriors train. One of the men commands, demanding that 4 logs be brought in. Someone watches from the sidelines. Someone carries the logs, and someone else sets them up. The thug stands nearby with a satisfied smile, slinging his blade over his shoulder. Smugly smiling, the thug asks to bring another log. As this was only a warm-up, one of the men grudgingly responds to this request. Sun silently shakes his head negatively. Standing next to Sun, Haran watches as the disgruntled man asks the next warrior to come out. A warrior with a sword behind his back asks for 2 logs to be put up for him. Sun explains to Haran that the standards between those who are strong and those who are useful are very different. He explains that those who are strong are always obsessed with being heroes and breaking ranks, and if a warrior follows the rules despite being weak, such soldiers can make an incredible army. The warrior splits the 2 logs with his blade, and the man who oversees the passage of this stage records that the task has been passed. The controlling man looks at Swena, the captain of the royal guard, makes an affirmative gesture with his head. Haran wonders why Sun is telling him all this. The man with the list calls out the next man. The girl makes a move. A stranger with blue eyes wearing a wide-brimmed hat asks for 6 logs to be placed. The man sighs unhappily. A girl stands beside 6 bound logs. The man grudgingly asks what she's worth and demands that the girl start. The girl reaches for the blade, pulling it from its sheath. With one sharp blow, the girl chops 6 logs. With a sharp lunge, the stranger chops the logs, which fly off to the side. Sun is shocked. Haran is surprised at how the girl split the logs with such ease. The remains of the logs fall at the feet of the puzzled Swena and Haran. All the observers frownzy in place, amazed at what they saw. The man with the list asks the girl's name in a trembling voice. The ash-haired stranger replies that her name is Yagon, daughter of Night Moment Salita. The girl's gaze looks determined. The mysterious warrior says she has come to meet the princess. Haran looks at her in surprise. Yuta, sitting at her desk, says that she has heard that the warrior is the daughter of the Night Moment. The girl replies in the affirmative, getting on her knee and bowing her head to the princess. Ahaso sits on one side of the table, and Sun and Haran stand on the other side. The princess says with a friendly smile that it's a pleasure to meet her, as the Night Moment family has always been close to the royal family. The warrior woman responds with gratitude. Sun hesitantly says that as far as he knows, Nightwind's family left this world a long time ago, so they need to somehow figure out that the girl is really their daughter. The warrior touches her hat, left hazeless. The girl opens her shoulder, revealing the branding. She says they are all branded with fire at birth, explaining that the hotter it is, the stronger the metal will be. Haran is disturbed by what he sees, and Haso says the girl is definitely Night Moment's daughter. Yuta asks that Salita tell her why she was looking for her. Kneeling down and bowing her head, the warrior explains that she only came here to tell the princess the whereabouts of the Dragon Spring treasure sword. The girl's gaze looks determined. Yuta jumps up, shocked at the interjection. Salita explains that this treasure was made by the royal family, and so she wanted to tell where it was. The princess asks to be told sooner rather than later where it is. The girl kneels the same way in front of the princess and the heroes, saying that the treasure is in the Iron City of Onchon. To Haran, the floor of the room seems to turn into a water surface. Salita explains that the item he is looking for is in the possession of Kazan, the viceroy of the Iron City. Haran is shocked by what he hears and remembers his last assignment. Sun asks the girl in surprise how she knew about it. Salita says she saw him, and Haso twirls his cane nervously in his hand. Sun frowns and replies that this can't be. After all, Kazan is Jod's right-hand man, and if he has this treasure then, why didn't he give it to his ruler? The girl introduces a demonic face with red eyes and sharp teeth and blood splatter, and tells the captain of the royal guard that apparently he doesn't know Kazan well enough. Without moving from his seat or raising his eyes, Salita says that from the outside it may appear that Kazan has sworn allegiance to Jod, but he has a bad habit of keeping his trump cards to himself. Raising her eyes, the warrior says that Kazan is true to his habits, even if this trump for his own lord. In the starry night sky, the month shines brightly among the clouds. The valley is dark, and only fireflies in the years illuminate the river and part of the mountain. In the distance, a lighted building can be seen through the open gate. The lights are out on the second floor. Haran sits on the bed in his room. Moonlight shines through the windows. The guy is thinking about his new assignment. Remembering the image of the ash-haired girl, he thinks about what means his next destination is Unchun, and since it is Iron City, it will be similar to the blacksmith village from Hero's Quest. Humming thoughtfully, Haran lay down on the bed, looking up at the ceiling. He tries to figure out what the one-third part of the quest means, because he hasn't seen this before. Closing his eyes, the hero decides that tomorrow he will have to ask to go with them. The next day comes. The weather is sunny. Not far from the gate there is a pier to which the heroes have come. Nearby there is a ferry on the water, and a tall willow tree grows by the river. Yuta confidently responds with a denial to someone else's question. Haran wonders why. Standing by the river are the warriors, Salita, Tasan, Haran, and Yuta. The princess stands in front of Haran and explains to him that this trip is not the same as delivering a letter, so she cannot send him on such a dangerous task. Pointing at the male soldier and the boy warrior, Sun says that besides, they have people they can trust with this kind of thing. Sun explains that the man named Namu, chewing on a blade of grass, is a veteran soldier with various skills, and the smiling kid with curly hair, Jaro, is the most prominent recruit. Sun says with a smile that Haran doesn't necessarily have to participate in such a thing. Haran replies with a smile that he understands. The guy is alarmed and wonders what he should do in this case, because if he continues to insist, he might be considered strange. Haran stands behind Yuta with his head down. Sun informs the soldiers that it is time to move out. The soldiers take the order. The warrior girl looks at the heroes. Salita looks at Haran's blade and his clenched hand in a feast. As Namu enters the ferry from the dock, Salita calls out to Yuta. The warrior expresses hope that Haran will be able to accompany them. Haran is greatly surprised. Sun stands behind the princess back with clenched fists. A confused Haran stands between Yuta and the warrior. The princess asks by Haran what wants Salita. The guy waits in surprise for an answer. The warrior replies that if she were the princess, she would send more experienced warriors to reduce the risk of failure, as no one knows what might happen. Yuta hesitates, looking at Haran with a stern look. The princess says that she said it would be really dangerous this time, and asks the guy if he wants to go despite that. A bewildered Haran replies that everything is fine and they just need to find the sword's location. Lowering his eyes, the guy hesitantly says that there might be clues there to how he can get his memories back. The princess sighs heavily as she closes her eyes, but says that if Haran really wants it that badly, then it can't be helped. Haran exhales in relief. Closing his eyes, Namu prepares to steer the ferry. The soldier informs them that they are ready to move out, and suggests that Haran climb into the ferry. Yuta is alarmed. The heroes set off on their journey. The soldier driving the ferry says that this time they will disguise themselves as merchants, then find where the sword is and return. But because Iron City is hostile, they will have to be careful not to give away their identities. In the ferry are a smiling Jaro, a pensive Salita, and a confused Haran looking toward the shore. Sun asks the heroes to take their time so as not to mess up the plan, and Yuta expresses her hope that they will return safely. Namu smugly replies that they can be relied upon. Jaro smiles in a friendly way. With a cold stare, Salita doesn't look toward the shore. Haran decisively agrees to fulfill the princess's request. Sun and Yuta watch a departing ferry traveling down a mountain river. There is some rustling in the bushes behind the princess' back. Poya watches in surprise. The paddle dips into the water. It leaves circles on the water behind him. The ferry sails past the mountain scenery. Namu steers it, holding an oar. Jaro and Salita sit in the middle of the ferry, while Haran is in the stern. Looking ahead, against the sunset sky, a flock of black birds flies by. Haran looks after the departing birds, and Salita looks at the boy. The hero looks focused. The guy turns around and interjects in surprise when the warrior woman asks if she can't see his sword. The girl says with a friendly smile that apparently this sword is very dear to Haran, so she would like to take a look at the blade. Haran agrees in a friendly manner and holds out his sword to the warrior. The girl smiles and thanks the hero, keeping her gaze on the blade. The shining sword is in Salita's hands. The girl picks up the gleaming blade and runs her hand over it. Admiring it, she says it is an excellent sword, forged from meteorite ore. The warrior says that because the metal is unyielding, it is difficult to work, which is why most blacksmiths can't handle such a material so easily. The warrior's gaze becomes surprised, examining the pattern on the blade in the light of the setting sun. The girl says that there is only one blacksmith who engraves such patterns on swords. The girl's gaze grows cold. Haran recoils fearfully when she says that every such blade has its rightful owner, and asks where the guy got the sword. Haran anxiously wonders why Salita is asking him about such a thing. The warrior and Haran look puzzled when they hear Namu say that this sword was given to the guy by the princess. Leaning on his paddle, the soldier explains that Haran may look innocent, but he's strong enough to overpower the deputy commander of the Rocky Autonomous Region, and he got the sword from Yuta when he saved her before. Haran laughs nervously. Salita is silent, and Jaro emotionally asks if that means it's true, and says that it turns out the rumors don't lie. The boy with the gray eyes asks if Haran is the one who defeated the Rocky Autonomous Region thug. Without waiting for an answer, he admits that he joined the army after hearing Haran's story. The boy introduces himself to the hero and says he's glad to meet him. Haran replies with a friendly smile that he too would enjoy working alongside Jaro. Salita apologizes for her questions, holding out his sword to Haran. Taking the blade back, the boy replies that it's no big deal. Lowering her eyes, the warrior explains that the reason she is so in awe of Haran's weapon is because it is one of the excellent blades forged by her father. Haran sighed thoughtfully. The lad is surprised at how enthusiastically Jaro shrieks, calling his blade a superb sword of Danya. The boy assumes that this sword must be very expensive. Namu tells the newcomer with a smile that it's disrespectful to evaluate a superior sword, because it's a sign of trust. Haran pondered the man's words. Lowering his eyes, he reflects on the fact that he hadn't thought of trust in that way. The sword lies in the palm of Haran's hand. The guy turns to Nam. The man replies with a smile that Haran can relax and call him by name. The hero asks confusedly how far they are now from Iron City. Looking thoughtfully into the distance, Namu replies that if they follow the route, they should reach their destination in about 4 days. He suggests they take the opportunity to rest before arriving. Haran smiles. Black birds fly over the Iron City of Onchong. Buildings with round roofs sit on top of mountains that are connected by suspension bridges. The city is filled with people. Smoke rises above the rooftops. Steam is coming from a metal chimney. A man stands on the second floor of a round building. Someone is pacing loudly in a room with a red interior in which the furnace is melted and a wolf pelt is thrown over a chair. There is also a wolf pelt on the floor. The warrior kneels and lowers his head, holding out a red scroll. He says that he has delivered the scarlet letter, but that he has also delivered the black letter. On a chair with a beeskin cape sits a man with burning blue eyes. Through gritted teeth, Kazan, the viceroy of the city, demands that everyone be rounded up. The warrior raises his scarred face and clarifies if it's worth it after such a long time. Cauldron announces with a bloodthirsty smile that it is time for war. The man is certainly pleased by this.